Bring Your Worth Show. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. I'm your host, executive producer, and the founder of Bring Your Worth, Damon Brown. So good connecting with you today on a Friday. Hope things are lovely over there. Things are a little bit cloudy and muggy here in Las Vegas. But it's kind of that weird weather, which is why I'm wearing the sweater, which I will explain what the sweater means in a minute. Bring Your Worth Show comes to you every Wednesday and Sunday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. If you want support as a side hustler, as a solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur, which as a business coach, and that's my specialty. And also I'm part of your community. I'm one of you. Be sure and subscribe. It's free. As far as I can tell, it'll always be free. I charge more for my business coaching. Of course, I have my books. All of them are available in the links below. This is completely free to you. So please take advantage of it. And thank you so much for supporting the community and coming through. I have my new book coming out, the complete Bring Your Worth collection, the whole collection. I've been doing business books for about 7 years, about as long as my second son has been alive. And all of them, almost all of them, are compiled in this one. This is a good primer if you're trying to get into work, if you're trying to make an impact on the world, create work that's sustainable, and also live your life, which is important. As I said in passing, I am a parent, so it's important that we show up for our kids as well, not just to do our work. In case you missed it, just did a marathon. Make 2024 profitable, which if you're watching this live stream today about making a profit, this will probably be up your alley. Business live stream marathon. As it implies, it is a marathon. It is actually all the live streams, every single one of the live streams I did last year to prepare you for this upcoming year. If you're watching this live, Q4 is upon us. We're in the middle of September as I'm recording this. That means in about 14, 15 days, it's going to be the last quarter of the year. This is the time to prepare for that. This marathon is about 9 hours long. The beautiful part is that it's a podcast. It's audio based. If you want to see my mug, you can certainly watch it on YouTube the whole time and watch my face. But if you want to get the game from it, you can just go ahead and put on your YouTube player, or if you this is broadcast on LinkedIn, it's also broadcast on Amazon Live. Shout out to y'all. You can just plug it in to your plug in your headphones. See, don't know what to do with my hands. Plug in your headphones, put your phone in your pocket, and then just go on a long walk like I do. Meditate on it, do the dishes, play with your kids or whatever, your pets, go on a long road trip. It's perfect for that. I've done a whole bunch of traveling, driven across the country a few times, traveled quite a few other places around the world, talking Japan and other places where it's those long flights. This is the vibe of that. Put it into your back pocket, literally, and get the game from there. It's talking about passive income. It's talking about emotional intelligence, which, if you're not emotionally intelligent, you actually might be blocking your sales, if not your blessings, depending on your belief systems. It gets into that. Be sure and check it out. A lot of you have already come through that and given really good feedback. I'm so honored to be able to support y'all in this particular way. Excuse me. Watch this space. We have the ultimate guide to freelance writing. My background is freelance writing. I have 2 degrees in journalism, master's in magazine publishing from Northwestern. Shout out to Northwestern. And I've written for Playboy, the New York Post, AARP, Family Circle, a lot of publications. There's so many articles and magazines and newspapers and websites that I wrote for until I pivoted into entrepreneurship about 7 or 8 years ago. I want to give as much insight as possible. I've had some recent live shows. You can click on the links below. I can talk today. Click on the links below, or just go to bringyourworth.tv. You'll see them doing a whole lot of lives recently. I did a recent live on how to begin freelance writing that got such good feedback, as well as my recent keynote that was made public that I did for the American Society of Journalists and Authors over this summer. With all that feedback, I'm realizing I want to create some type of whole resource, one-stop shop where you get all the insight that you need about freelance writing, how to pitch articles, how to get paid for articles, how to create passive income based on the articles that you write. All these things are super important. Myself and other veterans in the game, we talk about this all the time. I want to give that to y'all. I was actually planning on doing it a lot sooner, but I ran into some technical difficulties. I think It's just cranky with the weird humidity. I feel like my computer is running hot. So give a shout in the comments if you also have some weird weather like we have in Las Vegas. Anyway, today is really weird as far as the weather. I'm sure that's not helping my computer. So there's actually some issues that I'm having, technical difficulties I'm having with getting the episode together, but it'll be up very soon, as in within the next week. Be sure to subscribe. You can subscribe for free and stay plugged in. Turn on the notifications, and I will get it to y'all as soon as possible. I'm excited about it. You can hear me stuttering over here because I think it's going to be a heater. And a lot of people that I coach as a business coach are journalists or want to be journalists or working within a journalist environment. This will help you get that game that you need to do it independently, as I have for a few decades. All right. This Monday, this is exciting. My first collaboration, build your subscribers from zero. I'm actually on the other side of the mic now. Well, sort of. I'm interviewing, but also I'm going to be getting interviewed. I'm getting interviewed by James Oliver Jr. Shout out to James. He's the founder of the Parentpreneur Foundation, which supports African-American entrepreneurs who also are parents. And he's also the new CEO of, he's CEO of the new company, I should say, Kabila. And Kabila actually is an app that matches co-founders. So if you're co-founding something, let's say you're doing a startup and you want to connect with somebody else, you want to collaborate with them, the app is super smooth where you see other people you can collaborate with. What I did my last startup, Cuddler, which is the one that my partners and I sold, I was the main one that understood media, and I also understood intimacy and technology, which made sense because our app was connecting people for hugs. Another one of my co-founders was really into technology, and he knew programming like the back of his hand. He knew how to do systems, which back in the day was really important because you didn't have as much technical support from Amazon Web Services and all these different things that we have now. We didn't have that back when we did Cuddler back in 2014. Our third co-founder was an artist. Neither one of us were graphic artists, so they were able to really shape the UX and the feel of the app. That led us to success and an eventual acquisition. Kabila would have made it super way easier to find appropriate co-founders because me being the media / culture co-founder, connecting with someone who was called a technical co-founder, and connecting with someone who would be a UX / artistic co-founder. This is the guy that I'm going to be chatting with. We're going to be talking about how I raised the support of this show from a year ago. It was about 500 of y'all that subscribed. And now we're just above 18,000 of y'all that have subscribed and counting. So we're going to talk about how we go from 0 to 60, or in my case, 18, 19K. We'll be talking about that. It'll be a really fun conversation. James and I go back, and he's also gone through his startups, and obviously he has a couple new startups now. So it'll be a fascinating conversation. I recently had a live, I think it was a couple of days ago. You can check in the links below about how you can build an audience. In fact, we talked about that, I think it was on Tuesday. This will be almost a continuation of that. Definitely go and plug in. If you want to learn more about James and his work, he's the co-founder of the matching app, Kabila. Check it out. I think it's in beta testing right now. I think they're going to be rolling it out to the public soon. So be sure and plug in if you are a side hustler or solopreneur. Quick sidebar on that. If you're going to be creating things and building things and you're a side hustler, then you might have the capacity to do it on your own as a solopreneur. Certain apps or certain products or services lend themselves to you creating it on your own, but you might need some help. This would be a great app to start with to figure out what help is available. And I've been a longtime supporter of the Parentpreneur Foundation for African American entrepreneurs. Click the link below. You can learn about the community that we've been fostering over there for quite a while. And then the awesome elephant in the room is my shirt. As I've talked about the other day, I'm connecting with y'all live every work day here in September. We're about halfway through right now. So halfway through this beautiful marathon and connecting with y'all. I've been putting on different shirts that I wear because if you work from home, you got different shirts that you put on, different gear. This is one of them. So this is courtesy of Black to Business. Oh, wrong arm. See, everything gets mirrored here. Mirrored and mirrored. This has the colors of the African colors and so forth. And this is kind of an old school. I'm of that generation where you wore like sweatshirts and you made sure that you looked fly. Shout out to the 1990s. This is one of those shirts. If you're interested in checking out the shirt, you can get it at the link below. Black to Business. They're an organization. They support, again, African American entrepreneurs who are making an impact. Shout out to y'all. Thank you for this shirt or sweatshirt as well. They have t-shirts, they have sweatshirts and so forth. Even though I'm based here in Las Vegas, if you've come here during the wintertime, you know it can get cold as hell. And so there's actually a use for this. Brooks Brothers is one of my favorite outlets. And so I have a couple of really thin Brooks Brothers sweaters that I put on during wintertime. Like, it's no joke. It gets very cold here in Las Vegas because there's no protection. Think about in the desert, you ever seen in one of the movies where someone's lost in the desert and their skin is chapped and they're all sunburned and jacked up. But then by the time the sun goes down and suddenly they're freezing cold, we live in the middle of the desert here in Las Vegas. So that's the vibes. So no matter where you live, even in the desert, these kind of sweaters will work for you. The link is below. Again, I'll put it on the screen for y'all too. And about a year and a half ago, it was a minute ago, maybe 2 years ago, I had a chance to talk with the folks over at Black to Business Podcast. Shout out to the folks over there. Owning Your Power and Growing Your Hustle with Damon Brown. It was one of my favorite interviews of that time. And it was a period of time where I was really trying to articulate what that next level was going to be. I'm not even sure. In fact, when I did this program, I think the show might have just launched. So I'm about to hit the third anniversary of the BringYourWorth.tv in December. So this was about 2.5 years ago. So I would implore y'all not only for the game and the insight that hopefully I was able to pass on to y'all, and through Aquise, who's the person who interviewed me, shout out to you, but also with having it almost be like a time capsule of where I was at the moment, some of the behind the scenes of where I was envisioning the show. I haven't listened to the podcast in a minute, so I have to dig it up as well since I'm sharing it with y'all. And it's like, wow, like this, thinking about what I'm trying to do with Bring Your Worth TV is bring y'all behind the scenes. And I am a creator, a side hustler, a solopreneur, just like you are. And so I don't mind you seeing the rough patches, or when the technology, like I had a new episode I wanted to premiere this weekend. It sounds like it's not going to work out because I had tech issues. All those things ideally are a reminder to you that we're all kind of on the same journey, just at different places and maybe even different levels or scales, but we're all going through the same thing. Hopefully this podcast will help you out on that particular journey. I think that's to be the longest beginning of the show preamble I've ever done, but there's so much good stuff happening. And to remind you again, come through on Monday. Oh, and it's going to be live streamed to not only to James's platform, which is on LinkedIn and so forth, and Facebook, if you connect with him on Facebook, at James Oliver Jr., but it's also going to be simulcast, big word here, simulcast here on this program. So if you're a subscriber here, you are going to be plugged in, turn on your notifications, and make sure you come through. I think we're going to be getting questions from the audience as well. You're the audience, so come through. How you grow something from zero. All right. Today's show, More Profit 2024. As someone said, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And part of what we keep is based on how much we charge and then how much it costs us to actually get the product or service out. That gap ends up being defining if we have a good year or a bad year, even if we make it to the next year. I hate to be extreme like that, but that's kind of the way that it works. When you're working independently, whether you're doing a startup, you're doing a product from the proverbial kitchen sink, you're starting from something from scratch, you're building a TV show, whatever, there often is not a blueprint for that particular path unless you have good mentorship. That's why I was recommending the communities I recommend at the top of the show. As you go into the next year, you need to be strategic, not only about your business, which is your execution, but the business of the business. What are your margins? What are your systems? How are you going to set things up? Are there certain tax preparation things you need to do with the system that you have? Do you need to get employees this upcoming year? All those things will impact your profit in the upcoming year or at any time. But the new year is the perfect time to do so. So we're going to dive into how you can increase your profit and how you can build some systems to make sure you can even tell if you have a profit or not. I've built some things I didn't even know if I was making a profit or not, and I was like, how am I supposed to figure this part out? And I had to work backwards and work it out. That's not the position you want to be in. I'm passionate about this because, I've been in the arena a few times. I know what it's like out there. I know some of the mistakes that can happen because we're so focused on creating versus being focused on the business. So let's get to the bottom line, quite literally, actually, that we talk about quite a bit in the coaching practice that I have, and in many other areas, and that is, how can I make more money? This, how's it come together? There's two big ways you can make more money that I found, and this is a business 101. You know, it's something that people that have successful businesses, they understand and know. There's two metrics that you can adjust to make more money. The first metric is to have more customers, have more people you serve, have a bigger audience. The second metric is to charge more, to charge more for what you're doing. That second part has a little bit of a caveat because you might not have necessarily have to charge more. You might just make your work a little bit less expensive. I would caution you on that second part though, because once you start to make yourself a little bit cheaper, then you're sliding from a French Laundry or a really fancy restaurant and slowly sliding to McDonald's. You don't worry about McDonald's ingredients. I'm pretty sure they don't worry about it either. No shots at McDonald's. I know folks that work with McDonald's. No offense to y'all. The main focus, though, is on making the most of the money and making the profit margin as big as possible versus necessarily having the highest quality ingredients. That ends up being the balance that you strike. When I have my coaching practice, it's at damonbrown.net, and I started to build it up. And it kind of goes in waves. If y'all are coaches or you're a therapist or any type of service organization where you're working with people one-on-one, you have ebbs and flows. I have some years where I have so many coaching clients, like my head is spinning. I have other years where it's a relatively quiet, stable, and it goes like waves. One of the decisions that I made a few years back was during one of those big waves that I still want to keep one-on-one coaching. One individual, we're talking just like I'm talking to you. That gave a level of intimacy, a level of connection, and frankly, one of the reasons why I love coaching. I do some group coaching sometimes, but mostly I focus on the one-on-one. That was the decision. Does that leave money on the table? Perhaps. And is there certain challenges with the system? Sure, absolutely. But I'm able to change that because every year, if you've been watching Bring Your Earth TV for a while, you know that I raise my prices every year because I get better as a coach. Hopefully, I'm getting smarter just like you are every single year from the books you read or whatever, connecting with people, just your experience, but also for the cost of inflation. And no one's going to knock on your door and say, hey, you should raise your prices because inflation is 5% this year in America. No one's going to do that for you. So as you get more seasoned, you do need to raise your price. As I raise my price, it makes it easier to be committed to the people that I serve without worrying about my pocketbook. So if you're trying to make more money, again, there's two routes you can do it, as basic as possible. Number one is to increase the amount of people that you serve, but then you have to be careful as far as the quality, like I was talking about, make sure you can serve all those people. And that requires you maybe scaling, which might take more money out of your pocket because you need to hire more people. The alternative is to raise your prices, but you better make sure if you do raise your prices, it's justifiable. I know I'm a better coach year to year from working with y'all, from doing new books, from coaching additional people, from doing this TV show, from going to the TED conference, all these different things. So I know I'm up on my game to justify my prices, get my prices right on my website at damonbrown.net. So if you're going to raise your prices, you need to make sure that you show up in a way that's reflective of those prices. And if you're going to serve more people, it might bring you in more money, but then you need to make sure you're not costing the service that you're going to give to those people, and or you might end up losing your margins on that and whatever benefit you have, because you might need to hire more people to take care of your bigger audience. Be sure and jump in the comments if you have any questions in regards to how you can make more money. There's some great resources on this one. I gotta say, Alan Weiss, where do I start? He's a consultant, about a generation or two older than me. Family members, you know who you are, put me onto him. Fantastic. This book changed the way that I looked at my work. I was a relatively new consulting. I don't know how to say it. Relatively new consultant doing editorial consulting for organizations. This is a handful of years ago. And I was negotiating something. I didn't know what the hell to charge. A lot of people that were around me, back to the network thing, hadn't done what I had done, or they did it, but they did it in a different way. And I got so much game from this book. I remember I was negotiating something. Money was tight, but this was going to be super lucrative. And that's kind of a tough place to be, where you're hungry, maybe quite literally. You're hungry and you have to negotiate something and be of your higher mind. Because then you don't want to underprice yourself either, just because you're desperate. Because then, at least in my case, when I've done that, I've kicked my own ass, as they used to say. Book was recommended. I had to give them the proposal the next day. I found this book on Kindle. I swear it costs about $40. And I was like, oh my God. But I'm negotiating. It was a very high, very lucrative contract. At least it could have been. I bought the book, tore through it that night, end up charging 2 to 3 times more than what I was initially going to charge. And they said, no problem. And we went for it. That particular project changed the course of my career at that moment, all based on this book. So I cannot overhype this book. His basic argument is that we need to price our work based on the value that we're giving to the organization versus the time we're putting into it. The value we're putting into that organization versus the time we're putting into it. So it doesn't matter if the project or whatever you're working on takes an hour or it takes 100 hours. It doesn't matter. If you're going to work with an organization, if you're going to do a book, whatever the case may be, an organization or group of people that you're working with, it's going to 10x the amount of money they can make, then your proposal, your contract, your argument should be reflective of that. That doesn't mean you have to give them a silly price. It just means don't undervalue yourself. And if we're going to make more profit in this upcoming year, it can't be about, this is how much I think I can get away with. It has to be about bringing your worth and saying, this is what I'm contributing to this conversation. This is what they're going to get out of it. Based on what they're going to get out of it, this is how much I'm going to charge. Now, whether they're able to accomplish that or you guys need to compromise, that's a different discussion. But I know if you undercut yourself, people will happily accept it. You can't negotiate your way up. But if you actually bring your worth and say, this is how much I'm worth, then you can talk your way into something that hopefully takes care of everybody involved. I'll get off my sermon on that one. It's a hell of a book. Highest recommendation on here by far. Why You Aren't Charging Enough, a recent episode. It takes all my conversations on the Bring Your Worth TV show on here and puts them into a digestible format so you should understand or can understand why you should be charging more. So many people that I coach, there's a level of resistance for asking or even saying, this deserves more money on my end. there's a resistance there. There's a challenge, and it often comes down to us not realizing how much worth we bring. This show is called Bring Your Worth for a reason. We often are worried about this person or this organization doesn't have the budget for me. They're going to say no. They've never done this before. The litany of things is just long. You're probably familiar with some of them. I hear them in my mind too. But all of them often come down to I'm not sure if the work that I'm doing is worth the money that I want to charge. There's no outside entity, even me, that can show you what your work is worth. You have to figure out that part of the journey. I can't do that for you. I can't do that for you. You have to find value in your own work. But I will tell you this, until you find value in your own work, then nobody's going to charge you what you're actually worth. That's not going to happen. This episode is the beginning of that conversation. Um, Again, my highest recommendations. This one right here, buy it now. Buy it now. I think it's a little bit cheaper now. Buy it now. And why aren't charging enough? Watch it as soon as the show is done. Like, biggest recommendations if you're worried about your money. Bring Your Worth show every Wednesday and Sunday, 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Subscribe if you're feeling the content, or throw your comments in. What challenges do y'all have as far as with getting your money right? Asking for the money that you feel like your business or your service deserves, with the profit margins and so forth. Hopefully, I've given some game and some insight into that. But I'd love to hear more about what you guys are going through. All right, that leads to the next one. It's kind of like levels. Like, all right, I'm charging what I'm supposed to be charging. I'm getting what I'm supposed to be getting, etc. How do I actually manage the money that comes in? This is a tough one because we don't. I talked about this on a recent live. I think it was it was in regards to the last live episode, actually from a couple days ago, about growing and building an audience. You can check it again in the links or go to bringyourworth.com. Bringyourworth.com, bringyourworth.tv. Bringyourworth.com is my website. Bringyourworth.tv and check it out. It was how on growing an audience. With the last couple lives that we had. We can do so much visioning as far as what we want, particularly when it's something we don't have. I wish I was a millionaire. I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller, etc. We can just keep going and going and going. But then what happens when we do become a millionaire? What happens when we are a baller? What happens when we have the best-selling book? What happens is that we don't often prepare for the other side of the mountain. I've had a couple bestsellers. I've had some successes. Maybe you have too. And if you have, you recognize that when you have that success, there's a whole nother mountain to climb and or more things to manage. And if you don't strategize what you're going to do after that, then you're going to end up in trouble. And often you end up losing whatever you gained. An excellent book that talks about this, one of my favorite books, favorite books. It's called Sudden Money. This is so old. You see the dog ears. You can tell when I started taking my freelancing seriously. Shout out to Susan Bradley. Bradley? Bradley, not Bradley. I don't know who that is. Susan Bradley. Fantastic. She has like 5 new editions. No Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. Excellent book. I do not have the cover anymore. I might have lost it in Katrina, y'all. Like, that's how long ago I got this book. There's another very expensive book. I'm not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. As of this recording, it's gonna cost you about $50 for that book. But let me tell you what the book is about. I got to keep it in my hand because, man, this book is fantastic. There's a reason why I've had it for going on 2 decades. It talks about what happens when you get a financial windfall. In fact, I think the subtitle is How to Handle a Windfall, something to that effect. This talks about how we go from barely getting by or being middle class or whatever your station might be, And suddenly we're able to eat out every night. Suddenly we can buy a new car. Some of us who are really balling can buy a plane or some crazy stuff. Like, what is the psychological experience of that? As a business coach, as an author, I love the idea of not just saying I want to make $1 million, being like, no, like what's the mindset that I need to get into when I do become a millionaire? Because chances are, I've worked with a lot of folks, chances are whatever you're aiming for, it eventually will come true. Maybe not in the form that you want it, but it eventually will come through. It might just be in a different form. But if you're persistent at it, most of us do get that thing that we want because we're laser focused on it. And then whatever your belief system happens to be. What we don't prepare for, though, is actually winning. This talks about that. And it talks about the case for athletes. It talks about lottery winners. And then might be more applicable to most of us that are connecting here on this program, what it's like to make it big as an artist. My last startup was acquired, and I went through this period of time where I wasn't sure what my identity was anymore, because I was the founder of this startup. We got 250,000 users, and then suddenly it got acquired by our choice. It wasn't aggressive. We decided to sell it. But even when it's in your hands, there's still identity shift, maybe even identity crisis that happens. Not to mention, there's a beautiful term she uses in here. It's called sliding down the money chute. That basically means, let's say you get a phone call. I would say a DM, but that doesn't sound legitimate. But you get a phone call, you get a letter in the mail, and it's like, hey, whatever you make a year, this thing took off. I want to buy the rights to this, blah, blah, blah. Here's 10 times that. Here's 50 times that. Here you go. Where's your bank account so I can wire it to you? Think about that experience. See how it feels in your body. That's falling down the money chute. Suddenly, all these things that you found stable and that you took as who you are, suddenly those things are shifting. And I'm not a very money focused person. And even for me, when I've gotten a lot of money or my stuff got acquired or whatever, I went through all kinds of emotions. If you're a money driven person, please get this book, because I'm not even money driven in that kind of way. And I went through this stuff, still going through it. Grab this book so you can understand, when you get that higher profit, how to psychologically handle it. She even has 5 steps, a 5-step process to go through that her clients and other folks, I think she's a CFA, her clients and other folks have gone through to deal with that process. That's why I'm emphasizing it so much. Make sure that you're psychologically ready to get that windfall. And on that note, what to do with a financial windfall, episode 254. So glad I started numbering these. So I want to say the episode came out about a year ago. One of my favorite episodes. It's super short. It's like 6 minutes long. And it talks about some of the stuff that Susan talks about in the book, as well as me working with clients and other folks who are going through these major transitions. And what happens when you actually, quote unquote, win. People don't talk about that. They talk about getting up from failure and all those things, which is cool. I've written books about it. That's fantastic. But we don't talk about what happens when we actually win. And as Elizabeth Gilbert talked about in her, she had a beautiful TED Talk about 10 years ago, talking about success and failure. And to us, psychologically, it feels the same way. All we know is that the way that we're used to doing things, the way that we feel stable, doesn't exist anymore. That's the main thing that we know. Other than that, the rest of it's just little details. So how do you psychologically prime yourself to make more money? In this case, in 2024, a lot of it begins with this episode. So be sure and throw any quotes. If you want to throw a quote in there, you can, or comments. How are you managing the money that comes in? And how do you plan on managing it in the future when you get your more profitable upcoming next year? And the final question, which I think is really important, how do I keep track of the money that comes in? This is important for a few different reasons. Number one, when I first started my different practices, and that's the case for almost all businesses, you're just like, okay, well, let me just get somebody through the door. Let me just make my first dollar. Again, back to the proverbial $20 bill. Let me get my first dollar. Let me just go. And then you start going and you're like, oh, okay, I got some more folks coming on. That's cool. And then you're like, wow, a lot of folks are buying right now, but why does my bank account look like? Why does a business account something? And then suddenly you realize that there's certain systems you need to start putting in place. Now, putting them in place from the beginning sometimes can be helpful. I'm a big systems guy. That can be helpful. But sometimes you don't know if your business or your thing is going to work enough for you to create a whole system around it. Kind of like hiring a virtual assistant for a business you haven't started yet. It's like, well, you might eventually need a VA, but you're just starting. But if you're looking to make more profit in 2024, you need to have an infrastructure in place to do so. I am constantly building my infrastructure. There's some weak points I have here. I'm literally working on those every single day. So even for myself, even though I'm a coach, even though I've been through some stuff, ups and downs financially, even though I've sold my companies, I'm still going through that too. This is not a linear process. It's almost like a three-step process, but you're going through the cycle. I look at every year as going through the cycle over and over again. If you're having challenges keeping track of your money, or you're kind of trying to play catch up right here, a great example would be QuickBooks. I've mentioned them before. I got into QuickBooks when I was actually living in the South. I was living in New Orleans, and I was doing my own taxes. And it was just this period of time when I was like, this is too much. I'm doing too many things. As I talked about, I've been a long time freelance journalist. And as a freelancer, you might have, if you're having a decent year, you might have a dozen to 2 dozen clients. So you got receipts, stuff all over the place. I used to do a lot more traveling. And so I traveled to Japan to cover a video game conference. All those receipts or things related to it. I'm not a tax preparer, so don't quote me on this. But at the time I was doing it, all those things were at least partially tax deductible under I think it's a meals and entertainment portion of taxes. Whole nother discussion. But how do I keep track of those receipts? And I was still pretty young too, so it was like I wasn't organized in that way. I started using QuickBooks way back then, old school QuickBooks. Like, right, there was no broadband or nothing. It was just, I think you might have to get a CD if I remember correctly. I don't even think it was a DVD that far back. They are super old school until recently. Now they'll actually will help you with the tax preparations. I believe they will help you with the receipts. And there's all kinds of automated systems, way more complicated than I can get into in this episode, that actually will help you get yourself off the ground. This is a referral link. So if you follow this link, you get to support the show. And then also you get some type of bonuses related to my partnership that I have with QuickBooks. I'm sharing them because they got me out of some challenges when I was in over my head trying to get my taxes and receipts organized way back when I was living in New Orleans ages ago. So I know they're good on their work and they're good on their word. And they're also a lot stronger as far as the software that they're doing nowadays. All kinds of stuff that they're working on. Click on the link. Even if you don't purchase from them, at least find out what's happening. If you're going to level up your profit, you need to know how much is coming in and how much is going out. That's literally the definition of profit. If it's not QuickBooks, get some type of system that's going to help you along your way to get you to where you need to be, and ideally to stay there. And one of my favorite episodes, there's a lot of favorite episodes I'm sharing in this live, how to make infinite freelance money. It is not clickbait. It's not clickbait. I went back and forth on the title of it. I was like, people are going to think it's clickbait. It's not. It's not. It's not. Would not BS you on this. I have a 3-bucket system that keeps freelance money coming in. A lot of y'all who are freelancers who have been veterans like myself for a while, you're familiar with what going to be talking about in the video. But if you're new to freelancing or you're not sure how to keep the money flowing, be sure to check out the video. It's extremely short. That episode is about 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes long. It's short on purpose because it was one of those things where I was either talking to a colleague or maybe it was a new freelancer I was talking to. And I was like, oh, yeah, you do it like this, that, and that. And they just kind of looked at me and I was like, oh, I need to make an episode about this. I need to pass this on. The stuff in this episode, I learned the hard way. I'm trying to give it to y'all in 4 minutes. Be sure and check out the episode. As you see me beaming, I love the episode and I'm happy to kind of help y'all get to the next level. That's it for all the questions. If you had a last minute question as I wrap up, be sure and throw it in there. But I hope it gave you some insight and some game. Come through on Monday. When, see, I told you I was having tech issues. Give me a second. There we go. This Monday, 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. It's me being interviewed and also interviewing James Oliver Jr. of Parentpreneur and Kabila fame. We're going to be talking about how I got the Bring Your Worth show, BringYourWorth.tv, from a few hundred subscribers exactly a year ago to the 18,000 plus that are rocking with us now. Be sure and check it out if you're interested in any types of stuff in that thing, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope it gets you to the next level, especially I'm familiar with your work. So particularly with the creative stuff that you're doing, there's so many of us that are creators that are just trying to get by like Talib Kweli, right? And what I'm trying to do is give as much insight as possible so that more of us can make a living, or at least a partial living, in the creating that we're doing, and that we can keep showing up year after year to support the communities that we're in this for. So thank you. I'm glad the insights are getting you where you need to go. Bring Your Worth show every Wednesday and Sunday, 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I'm going to be live every weekday this month, and I will see you on Monday. Be sure to subscribe if you like the content. Until Monday, remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves.